Good evening. A vigil's being held tonight for the families of those killed and injured in the Birmingham pub bombings of 1974. 21 people died and 182 were hurt in one of the worst terrorist attacks in the UK.
Relatives say they're still suffering a living nightmare 38 years on. Tonight's vigil is part of a campaign to get West Midlands Police to reopen the case so the bombers are jailed. Bob Hockenhull reports.
Maxine Hambleton, forever 18. Her mother could only identify her by her bitten fingernails after she was blown up at 8:27 on November the 21st, 1974. Maxine had just arrived at the tavern in the town to hand out tickets to a party. That pub and the mulberry bush were reduced to rubble in a suspected IRA attack.
You cannot imagine what it's like. One day having a sister, and the next day you find out that her life has been literally wiped out for no reason.
Julie Hambleton spearheads the Justice for the 21 campaign. She wants the Birmingham pub bombings re-investigated. The case has never been officially reopened since 6 men were acquitted in 1991 after spending 17 years in jail. They said they'd confessed after being beaten by police.
These 6 didn't do it, so who did? But we're not going to bother looking for them. What does that say about ordinary folk and their lives in Birmingham?
West Midlands Counter-Terrorism Unit says it is assessing what future opportunities there may be to resolve the case. A forensic expert is to be consulted on the practicalities of opening new lines of inquiry.
We want them named, shamed, and if still alive, to serve their time for the crime that they committed. This was murder en masse.
Maxine Hambleton was to study law at Leicester University. Her family feels she's been let down by the industry she'd hoped to work in.
And Bob's by Birmingham Cathedral right now, where tonight's vigil is taking place. Clearly, some still many painful memories around this anniversary, Bob.
There certainly is, Nick, and as well as relatives, campaigners who are trying to get the case reopened have been listening to the service tonight. Everybody who was close to the families who lost their lives that night were told that it was hoped that this memorial service would give them some comfort. A short while ago, a procession came out of the cathedral to the memorial, which is sited here, and there were candles lit for each of the victims. Now, with me is Greg Cook, who is a campaigner for the case to be reopened. You're a friend of the family. Why did you decide to get involved, Greg?
Well, I had time on my hands, and I couldn't think of, given my relationship to the family, I couldn't think of a more important thing I could be spending my time doing. So I've travelled down here a few times in the lead up to this vigil, collecting signature petitions and distributing leaflets and what have you. In my opinion, we need to get an investigation opened into this outrage. I can't really call it anything else.
And briefly, it is very raw, isn't it, on the streets of Birmingham? You found that when you've been collecting signatures.
I'm not great with the numbers, but probably 1 out of 10 people that you approach has some direct relationship. They were a narrow miss, or on a couple of occasions I've approached somebody and generated floods of tears. It turned out that they were actually relatives of victims.
Greg, I think we're running out of time now, but thanks very much for speaking to us, and the vigil will continue behind me until 8:27 this evening.
Bob Hockenhull, thank you. Well, joining us now is our political editor in Northern Ireland, Mark Davenport. Mark, the Justice for the 21 group are demanding a public inquiry into the bombings. What do you think is the likelihood of the government granting one?
Well, I don't think they're alone in that call. We have families here in Northern Ireland, such as the families of the Omagh bombing victims, families of massacres that go back into the early days of the Troubles, who are also calling for inquiries. But alongside them, I think the Birmingham families will face an uphill struggle, because ever since the Bloody Sunday inquiry ran up a price tag of nearly £200 million, the government has adopted a position that there should be no more open-ended, costly inquiries, and so they will take some convincing to change that position.
How likely is it that new evidence could emerge nearly 40 years on?
Well, obviously there have been advances in terms of forensic procedures, and it could well be that West Midlands Police will be able to use the latest technology to turn up something. Here in Northern Ireland we have a historical enquiries team which is looking into older cold cases, but it is limited to Northern Ireland geographically, and the Police Service of Northern Ireland tell me that the West Midlands Police has not asked for their assistance yet in their review into the Birmingham pub bombings.
So what do you think would be the attitude of Republicans and Sinn Féin to making information available which could bring the perpetrators to justice?
I doubt that they would give any information in isolation in relation to the Birmingham pub bombings. Instead, you get Irish Republicans talking about the need for an overall truth commission in which all sides would tell the truth about what has happened in the past, but there's still no sign of an agreement between the various parties on exactly what kind of a shape and form such a truth commission might take. OK, Mark Davenport, thank you.
Coming up later, on the road